So again, those are the termini that we need to fulfill, providing some sort of a bike facility on our project. So as we had a discussion with IDOT, continued the discussion, one of the options would be, if you remember, we had a section that could accommodate our 5-foot bike lanes without any widening, essentially from Broadview up to Oakwood. And beyond that section, we could only fit it in certain places kind of sporadically. So an option is to provide bike lanes in that middle section of our project and then continue on side streets that go south to Clavey or north up to Central to provide that continuity. Excuse me. If we go that route, we would definitely need to go back to more public coordination, because that would be something that we haven't presented yet to the public. So IDOT, that would be kind of going back to our phase 1 approach, making sure we are providing the public the notice of what will be changed. There's a mention up there of 2,000 vehicles per day. If the route is less than 2,000 vehicles per day, and that's relative to Green Bay Road, which is north of 10,000 vehicles a day. If it's less than 2,000, we can essentially put signs and delineate a bike route without any pavement marking, without any widening, shared lanes, delineated lanes. We can literally stick up signs that allow that to happen. So that, in our conversation, became a potential solution. Again, any bike lane or any plan will ultimately have design approval and approval from IDOT in order to get to construction. So we boil it down to number 7. The options to provide bike facilities would land into two categories, A and B, as we labeled there. A would be if we want to keep bike lanes completely on Green Bay Road, as we've said before, that would require widening. This was not, from council input, a recommended solution, but it's one of the options. B would be that what we just described, the partial lane where we're going to go from Broadview to Oakwood and then go off Green Bay Road for side streets. This will make a little more sense as we move to the plan. So reiterating a little bit, the green section there is where we are able to get our 5-foot bike lane on either side with no widening. And the red sections north and south of that green section are areas that we would need to widen to get bike lanes continuous from one end to the other. So the yellow is a newer section that we're looking at this time. That would be on the south end, Broadview. Broadview continues from Green Bay Road down to Blackstone, actually, Blackstone Clavey. That would allow us to loop back to get to the logical termini at Green Bay Road and Clavey Road. And on the north end, or the north half, we could utilize Oakwood Avenue and at Bobolink and take that up to Central, again, accomplishing continuity of the bike path system up to the north end. So finally, got a picture of that map again. These are really the alternatives that we were requesting feedback from. Providing no bike lanes. The second one, basically matching the map down below, where we provide partial bike lanes and then off Green Bay Road, lower ADT routes marked with signs only. Or the last bullet, where we keep all bike lanes on Green Bay Road, which requires widening that previously we're assuming we would not be using. So that, I will stay on that one there since we have a map. That's a good point to stop and ask for questions or clarifications, and Ron and Manny or I will try to address those.
Thank you. So I'll just start by sharing with everyone who's joined us this evening. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate your continued interest in this project. This is the committee of the whole. This is not the city council meeting. So these are the meetings that are, believe it or not, informal, even though we're all sitting in here. We normally are sitting in the room behind you around a table, just sort of talking about policy decision-making. So no action is being taken this evening. No big decisions are being made. And generally, we don't have full-on conversations with the public during these meetings because they really are sort of supposed to be short meetings where we sort of chew over decisions that we're making around policy. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you to help manage expectations. And of course, we've greatly appreciated all of the input that you've provided via email, your participation at the public meetings and so forth. So I don't want you to feel stymied, but I do want to share that with you as we do have our actual council meeting coming up after this. And I can promise you we are not talking about this on that agenda. I have a couple of questions for you related to the road and then related to the bike lane question, and then I know that my council colleagues as well have some questions for you. You said that it is likely that this project will be pushed back to 2025. Can it be pushed further back?
That's a good question. It is related to how long the funding can, before the funding would expire.
Right.
And so we have two funding sources. We have an STP funding and an ITEP, both of which would have their respective expiration clauses to it that we would have to look into. So right now, pushing it back a year, we've already checked on that with Lake County Council of Mayors, and that it would not be an issue.
Okay, great.
Ask a related question to that.
If I could just do mine, and then we'll run down the group. Most major street projects in Highland Park just don't get this kind of attention, and I know that part of it is the bike lane question, but the other part of it has been the disaster that's been Clavey Road. I'm kind of curious to know, like, how do we, and maybe this is for Ron, I don't know, or Manny, how do we avoid a repeat of Clavey Road? I mean, there's so much that anyone who's driven on that road, anyone who lives near that road, cannot believe that we're still dealing with this, and I recognize this is not a City of Highland Park project, this is an Illinois Department of Transportation project, but for those of us who live around it, it kind of doesn't matter. I just want to know, how do we make it not be that all over again?
Well, I'll start and staff can jump in. So, Mayor, we recognize this project impacts many more residential properties on Clavey Road, certainly. So this is going to have a big impact, and it's really going to be imperative to us that we have ongoing, comprehensive, two-way dialogue with particularly the impacted residents as well as to the general public. And so I think, hopefully, one thing that I think has worked well in terms of construction updates is having a dedicated communication with the public. Anyone that's interested in signing up for Clavey Road updates will get a designated email providing regular construction updates. And so anytime, short of an emergency, something happening, we are providing regular updates in terms of here's what's happening in the next 2 weeks. And so people can anticipate initiatives like that. So that's one. The other part is for the general public using like message boards and regular communication modalities to send people back to our website just for regular communication updates. There are certain provisions that we've had in past contracts, which we would look at again, holding a contractor to a certain time frame when the construction needs to be done. Otherwise, they're faced with monetary penalties. And so that's something that has worked well. We do have some cushion in there, just given construction and weather and just, different delays that any construction project is going to anticipate. But that's something overall that has worked well that we would look at in the future. And then the last part is when we do the pre-construction meetings, we work with the contractor. One, we want to make sure selected contractor has the experience not only for a construction project of this nature, but one that involves the number of residential impacts like we have here, where there are people using their driveways and where are they going to park and so forth. And so with that, there are things that we do on a regular basis that, for example, when a parkway is torn up, and the contractor is working before they leave for the end of the day, we try to make sure that the residents have continued access to their property using construction material so they can access it at the end of the day and then again the next morning. And then Manny Gomez, our city engineer, if there's anything else. Manny.
Sure. Thank you, Gita. Can you hear me? Oh, good evening, everybody. Coming back to Clavey Road, what's different about Clavey compared to Green Bay? Well, I can tell you several things, Mayor and Council. First, we don't have a bridge on Green Bay Road. We had a bridge on Clavey Road. One of the issues that caused delays on that project were a utility conflict with a line that was energized, and they had trouble with getting a crane in because of safety issues, and that delayed some of the construction there as well. So that was one of the major things that caused delay. I will say this, Clavey Road, that first contract is not closed out, and we are looking at, assessing liquidated damages on that contract due to delays that were caused by several things, including some contractor issues. Of course, I won't get into all the details tonight with you, but that is a possibility there. We know it hasn't been pleasant, and we are looking at all options available to try to, give us relief and remedy on some of these things that have happened. On Green Bay Road, another difference, excuse me, is it's a two construction season project. We're already telling everybody it's going to be 2 seasons. We're not saying it's 1 and then it extends into being 2. So we are looking at the construction aspect of that and saying, okay, it's going to take this long because of what's involved and how we're going to maintain traffic during the construction. And everything else Gita noted as well with the, the communication. Of course, I would strongly recommend a dedicated website for the Green Bay Road project as well. It's a big project. You saw $50 million. A lot of residents live on Green Bay Road. And it would just be imperative that we have a good form of communication to share information with the public, especially when important things happen along the corridor.
Appreciate it, and most particularly I'm interested in the contractual obligations of the people doing the construction, specifically cleaning up after themselves. I mean, it's just been a lot that this neighborhood's been through, and to just say, and now we're coming back, it's a lot. And we need to make sure that our word can be held and that it's not just well, sorry, kids, communicating is important and critical, but it's also like, hey, there's more water coming into the boat. I mean, what are you going to do about it? It's just a terrible situation. So I appreciate hearing that we're talking about contractual obligations and holding them accountable. I want to know that the signals will be planned to be ADA compliant. We saw that Chicago just got sued over that. Wanted to make sure that's included in there. And again, I appreciate the community's input regarding the concerns around public safety. We all agree that that's paramount. As if we do these bike lanes, can we do them in a way that doesn't have this enormous green stripe down the street? And again, that's a big if, but just curious to know if we do go forward with this bike lane, I've never spent more time driving around looking at the side of the road as I have in the last few months, but white stripes seem to do a decent job without being obnoxious in people's front yards, so that's one of my questions.
Interesting, Mayor. Yes, coming back to the green pavement marking for the bike lane, one reason it's not required. There's nothing that says you have to paint it green. This is mandatory or it doesn't get approved. That's not a requirement. We looked at it as, there's a bike lane right next to moving traffic, motorized vehicles. And we thought that, enhancing the appearance of the bike lane to differentiate it, that it's a different use, would enhance the safety of that use and give drivers that sense that, okay, this is not an area that I should be driving on. This is an area that's for a different type of use. That's why we proposed the green pavement marking in this scenario.
Okay, and I can just tell you, driving from here through Evanston, nobody's got a giant bright green stripe running through their community, so just
Right.
wanted to share that.
Mayor, again, we don't have to put it in, okay?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. And there's no way to connect this to Lake Cook Road, even though that's not part of this project. If you're putting this whole thing in, I'm thinking there's like, a third of a mile south that then connects to the county line bike trail.
Yes.
Or the Cook County bike trail, if there is a way to move forward with bike lanes, is there the width in that area? Has that been looked at? I just don't want us to do it halfway.
Mayor, the answer to the question is yes, we can certainly look at extending it to the south of Lake Cook. What I would recommend, though, is that we look at a grant opportunity and try to make it part of a grant project, grant eligible to extend it to the south, unless the city wants to do 100%, local funding to do that type of improvement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those
Sure.
are my questions. I next have Kim Stone, then Andres Tapia, Adam, everybody on this end as well have questions?
I may.
Okay, stay tuned. Thank you.
When do you need to have decisions in place to stay on track for the 2025-26 construction timeframe? Sort of a follow-up to what the mayor asked before.
Oh.
Is the reason that we're pushing it back because it's taken us a little more conversation to get to decision-making?
Maybe do you have, I mean, I have the schedule. If you know the answer, I can.
Yeah, I mean, we, in order to get to, for instance, the January, we call it January letting, we would already be needing to submit plans by August. And pretty final, they call it a pre-final condition. And we just haven't been advancing that quickly because we will have pretty significant changes once a decision is made to put bike lanes in or not. So we will be, so we looked at that and said, we're not going to make the January 2024 letting.
Right, so for 2025, to put it out to bid in January, we would have to have pre-final plans ready in August of '24. So it's more than a year.
Okay,
I mean,
so we still have plenty of time.
We have time, yes.
To go through this at this point.
Yes.
And the two sections that would potentially require widening, do you have more information at this point on how much widening and on what the impacts would be if that were the direction? Because I know one of those sections, at least, is right in front of Lincoln School, and seems like that might be a place where widening might be a possibility.
Yes. Dave, do you want to get into that portion of how much widening? I mean, I have an idea, but I think you'd have
Well,
a
go
better
ahead,
idea.
go ahead. I mean,
Okay.
you're doing great.
To the south, I mean,
To the north.
oh, to the north.
To the south, the block to the south, I know is already a narrow block. That's the block.
Oh, okay.
Where the neighbors have been impacted by the Clavey Road construction. That section there has smaller parkways to begin with.
Yes,
So the
yes.
section on the south, to me, is a concern in terms of widening. But the section on the north might be a little bit easier to widen because it's got the
Yeah.
school on one side, the road is wider in
Yep.
certain sections. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, okay, let me think. I think it was, we were looking at 4 feet of widening there, if I remember correctly. And that's just to meet the minimum requirement, Councilmember Stone? Because we would need to provide 4 feet of pavement, remember, 4 feet of pavement, plus we can use that gutter pan, the gutter flag as an additional 1 foot to meet the 5-foot minimum requirement.
And
So
are
it would
there
be
a lot
about 4 feet on each
Are there a lot
side.
of trees within
Yes.
that section? Yeah.
Oh, there will be tree impacts with the widening, yes.
Maybe just to add to that, so we could go as far north as Kimball, hard to see there, but about 3 blocks north of that bobolink. But looking at Oakwood, it's a little bit more direct to get back to Central Avenue for providing that continuity as opposed to getting to Kimball and then, going west and trying to loop back.
Yeah,
Right.
Oakwood makes sense for that section because it gets you to the train station, it gets you to downtown without being at that intersection of Green Bay and Central where you've got two-lane streets both directions, you've got a
Right.
stoplight, you've got more complicated factors there. So Oakwood does make sense.
Yes, that's,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Andres?
Yeah, 2 topics. If we could do the first one first. Aside from the bike lanes, just from a project management perspective, in the planning, obviously, we're worried about the retail stores in downtown and the revenue business district being affected by the construction. And I know there's some dilemmas here that, well, when you're going to tear up the road, there's going to be some impediments. But how much are we taking into account, at least mitigating the impact on our businesses by the schedule, their high season or times of the day or things like that? How much are we taking that into account?
Councilmember Tapia, what I would say to that is, we would put in the most aggressive schedule that we can do and still have a manageable contract and bid. Unfortunately, there's going to be an overlap with the construction and the, business season. It's going to be in the summer. It's going to be when businesses are open. Will they be affected? I think the answer is yes, because I've never seen construction not affect businesses, and usually it's an adverse effect. But we'll try everything we can to expedite that, and, unfortunately, that's, I don't know of any real good solution. And with road construction, I mean, I don't want to say that, it's been found to be non-compensable as a state kind of law issue, but that's the way the state treats it.
Yeah.
So-
But a follow-up to that, have we taken into account even communications to the public and to the stores to be really informational about, well, here, not only is this the detour, but if you're trying to find these stores, there's these alternatives like on 41 and then to Central or something, because people develop habits for how to get to their favorite stores.
Sure,
You know, is there some sort of education or communication to sort of help, you know, shoppers maybe rethink alternative routes to get to their favorite stores?
We have not had a, you know, specific like meeting or workshop or anything just geared towards businesses and to address what you had just mentioned, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
And
once we move forward in this process, we will engage that, and we work with Carol and Hirsch as well in these situations to make sure businesses are informed, and I'm sure we can certainly include in our communication anything that helps businesses throughout this process.
Okay, so I have one more project management question, then I'll defer the bike lane ones to my colleague. I want to hear my colleagues speak to that, and then I can add something.
Okay.
The other project management question is, you know, part of the dilemma you have is you have all these different stakeholders, different contractors, different jurisdictions. When you're doing your master project plan, you know, with Clavey, and then, I don't know if it happened or not, so it's a question, but on Green Bay, is there some sort of kickoff project where you have the different stakeholders with different jurisdictions and different priorities get together and sort of almost negotiate who goes first, who goes second, and the deadlines, and then, because if one contractor fails their obligation, we may fine them, but then it has a ripple effect on the others that have reserved, you know, crews and trucks and construction materials. How are we bringing them together?
Well, for this type of project with the federal funding, we have two options for taking it out to construction. One is to have IDOT bid it in Springfield and have them do the contract. And then what happens is they bill us for the local portion, and the construction is usually the largest dollar component of the project. So we would be paying our 20%. If we bid it locally and do it ourselves, I mean, the contract ourselves, then we have to front all the money. So, you know, whatever it's going to be, 10 million or whatever, we'd have to have in a budget. And then we can ask IDOT to pay us, you know, the portion. But I think it would be harder to do that. Coming back to if we do it the way it's typically done, most local agencies don't want to front that kind of money. What will happen is there's a general contractor. The contractor, the low responsible bidder, would be, you know, presented as, you know, the low responsible bidder. We do bring that information to City Council when that happens, just to make sure that everybody's aware of who it is and, you know, if we have any concerns or recommendations on that. Once that's approved, and then the low responsible bidder, the general contractor, that company has the contract. And they're responsible for, you know, their subcontractors. And the subcontractors have to be approved by IDOT as well. They just don't bring anybody in. So they have to be on an approved list. So the general contractor is the one responsible for the construction. And that general contractor will be liable for the damages, liquidated damages, if things don't go well. So they really, you know, don't want to be in that situation. The other thing that we would do is we would hire a consultant engineer to help manage the construction part of it, because it would just be like a big project for us to handle with staff internally. I mean, the project alone is what we do in a year, one project, so it would just be very burdensome for us to try to manage it ourselves. Right now, I mean, I'm honestly, you know, Trans Systems has been doing a really great job with the Phase 2, so, I mean, I can see, you know, us considering them for Phase 3 as well, and they're familiar with the project. They do have that capacity, so that would be another way to manage that portion of the project.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to reiterate a little bit about what the mayor said, despite the need and the federal funding, I don't think there's any neighbor or any business that's sitting here saying, woo-hoo, let's get this done. I think this is a very, very good opportunity to underpromise and overdeliver. I would hope that we learned, you know, when the mayor talks about IDOT handling Clavey, most people just say, it's Clavey, it's Highland Park. We don't care who's doing it, it's still problematic. But just, you know, we know how great our Public Works Department is. I think it's really important, and I look back to a few years ago with the project by Northwood on Summit.
Right.
And the biggest complaint we got was the mess that the construction trades were leaving afterwards. People waking up and all of a sudden their driveway's torn up and they didn't know they couldn't get in or out. So I really think that the nature of this construction, the impact on so many different businesses, people coming through Highland Park, emergency vehicular traffic. I really think, and I love your idea, Manny, about a dedicated, whether it's a dedicated website or a portion of it. Some of the things Andre said about, hey, here's a visual of an alternate route to get to your favorite stores via Central instead of, 41 to Central instead of Green Bay. I think the more we let people know in advance and the more we communicate, we promised our constituents when the Summit project was going on that we would learn from this and do a better job next time. This is a huge project, and everybody thinks we're going to not do great. And it's such an opportunity to show what our Public Works Department is capable of, and the root of it is just communicate the heck out of it.
Yep.
So I'm glad to hear that. I think that's a great idea, if it can be incorporated through staff, and we have the manpower to work on that website, and I really like your suggestion about how to get to alternate businesses. But the biggest complaint I always heard was the cleanup at the end of the day. Things were flying around, people were complaining that it was on their lawn. So I hope that we can really, like I said, under-promise, over-deliver, and it'll make this 2-year project go so much faster. Are we talking about bike lanes or just the project?
No, bike lanes too.
Okay, so my 2 cents on the bike lane.
Sure.
I love the idea of bike and connectivity. I took the time with my son, we went out one night, and I measured 5 feet on each side from the curb to into the interior of Green Bay Road. And then we took my wife's SUV and measured how wide that is. I have some real concerns, and I think we're past the idea of widening. I don't think that's being considered. The idea of bollards or a concrete barrier is not being considered because that would require widening. One of our core priorities as a city is public safety. And when you take 5 feet and 5 feet and forget an Amazon truck or a school bus or a fire truck, but just a regular good old-fashioned SUV that we see flying around town, I have some real concerns as to bike traffic, car, center line. I mean, that bike lane is 5 feet wide, including the curb and gutter.
That's correct.
I'm about almost 3 feet wide. And I can't, and it's not because I'm fat. And I can't imagine, doing the simple math of where heading northbound, my right shoulder is going to be proximate to an ambulance or a fire truck, let alone daily traffic. I've read all the material. I see all the studies. I don't think, just from my real life experience, that when there is a bike in that lane, that traffic is going to slow down. I don't believe it's going to slow traffic down. I think the opposite's going to happen. I think people are going to hurry to get around those bicycles, and they're going to move further over that center line. So as much as I, hear the neighbors, as much as I hear the cyclists, as much as I've reviewed the Bike Walk HP plan, I don't know that I would at all support Green Bay Road having bike lanes just from a safety standpoint. I don't know that it's wide enough. I still am not convinced who we're doing it for. Our residents, avid cyclists, whatever the case may be. Are there other, maybe less busy roads that may be a better opportunity for us to enhance bike safe passage? But at the end of the day, I really did take the time to go out there and see what, we can all say 5 feet, 11 feet, 11 feet, 5 feet, but until you realize what a human being represents in that 5-foot lane and a normal everyday car, I just think it's really tight. And as a parent, I can't imagine putting a child in that bike lane without some type of real barrier. So as much as I appreciate the federal funding, I appreciate the plan, I really don't think I could be supportive of a bike lane on Green Bay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tony, did you want to say?
Sure. So occasionally, although Adam and I are very good friends, I disagree with him. And in this particular instance, I disagree not so much with his conclusion, but the manner of analysis. And I appreciate the time that you took to go out there and take a look at it. But for me, based on my experience, frankly, as an attorney, I tend to be data-driven and I rely on experts rather than anecdotal experiences or what is often viewed as speculation and conjecture. So my question to you, as an expert in this area, is, well, first of all, by way of background, cycling is legal on Green Bay Road now and will continue to be legal on Green Bay Road after we repave it and have a new surface on Green Bay Road. That's correct?
Yes.
How would designating and specifying where the cyclists are supposed to be, is that going to make Green Bay Road less safe than not having bike lanes? Or will it make it safer for cyclists?
This is how I'm going to answer that question, Councilmember Bloomberg. I understand the concern about the 5-foot bike lane next to traffic. I get it. I mean, I hear you, what you're saying, and for some people, it's very uncomfortable. But I will say this, the guidelines, the established, approved criteria and guidelines allow this type of facility to be constructed, and constructed with federal money. They will allow you to put a 5-foot lane with a stripe next to traffic, but you have to meet certain requirements. For example, you have to have an 11-foot lane, not a 10-foot lane or a 9-foot lane, where the cars or vehicles are. That's one thing. The other thing is, I mean, that lane, that bike lane has to be a minimum width. Now, there are recommendations when you have certain conditions. They're only recommendations. They don't say it's mandatory because of litigation. So they do have recommendations where, like, you know, in this case, you may consider a 6-foot lane instead of 5, but you don't have to. In this case, we're putting in what we consider, and we talked about this, you know, between ourselves, like, you know, are we comfortable with this? The conclusion we come to is we can put this in because it's already established as design criteria that's approved, and it's been used in other places. So, you know, the criteria, the design criteria is intended to provide a safe facility.
So I'm less concerned about litigation. There's governmental tort immunity that sort of makes that a non-issue. But the question I'm asking, and I think you've answered it, is that having a designated bike lane that meets certain minimum width requirements and other engineering requirements would make Green Bay Road safer for cyclists, where cyclists are going to be legally anyway. Is that an accurate understanding of what you've told me?
I would say that it would enhance the safety because it designates that area just for their use versus right now, there's no designation for it.
Okay.
I mean, it would call it out, it would specify it. If we go with green or no green, I mean, again, it would say this is where you can ride your bike.
Okay.
It makes it more safe than certainly what there is now, because people have the legal ability to ride down Green Bay Road now with no protection whatsoever, but at the same time, we're cautious about sending a message that this is a totally safe thoroughfare because you are going to be riding right next to traffic. So I think that's where the hesitation is slightly, but
So do
Does
you
that answer
agree
your
with those
question?
statements?
I would say, I would say there is validity to that, yes. I mean, there is,
And
again,
there's danger for any cyclist on any road shared with
well,
cars.
there's danger when you get in your car and go out and drive on any road, that's correct.
I understood that part of the statement, but the preliminary statement is, will this make Green Bay Road safer for cyclists who are going to be on Green Bay Road anyway and are going to share Green Bay Road with automobiles anyway?
I would say yes. I would say yes because, again, for the reasons I stated.
Okay. I have a couple of questions unrelated to the bicycle issue on Green Bay Road. They're relatively minor, if I can just ask those quickly. You talked about improving the driveway apron angles and grades. Is there anything that needs to be done to the right-of-ways between driveways as the grades are improved because the grade of Green Bay Road is going to be raised?
That's an excellent question. We would have to consider all of that along with the change in the driveway slope. When you change one area, you have to remember, you're not looking at, see, a lot of people look at it as an isolated item. They only look at one part of it, when you really should be considering what happens beyond it. You almost have to think like a 3D model. What's happening to the land next to this as you're changing it?
Right.
And how does it affect things? Because the last thing you want to do is change it where it makes an adverse condition, like you're putting water in somebody's property where it
Exactly.
wasn't there before.
Right.
So that definitely has to be considered, yes.
This is a somewhat minute engineering question, but is there any possibility that Green Bay at Central can now connect more accurately with Green Bay on the north side of Central?
That's another good question. You mean so they line up?
Yeah.
Right now they're split, right? That would require changing the north leg of that intersection some.
Okay.
And I think it would require, if I remember, I don't remember all the specifics, but if I remember correctly, it would require some right-of-way acquisition there.
Okay.
And that would,
That's probably not going to happen in this
well, it
project.
can be done. It's not impossible.
Okay. And then, just following up on what Councilmember Stone asked about, and I'm not saying that I'm in favor of it, but if there were some widening in the northern part of this project, there was a discussion about losing trees if we do that.
Yes.
I'm correct, we're going to lose a lot of trees in the process of this project without any widening, is that correct?
Well, we're estimating 20 right now.
Okay. And those are going to be replaced?
Yes. We will, well, yes,
Would
the
we-
plan is to replace them where we have room to put them, yes.
Okay. If we were to do this widening to the north, do you have any knowledge of how many additional trees might be lost? And if you don't know the answer to that right now,
I don't think I'm
that's,
going to remember the exact number. You're saying if we, in the red section at the north, and
Yes.
if we decided to widen so we could get bike lanes in there,
Yeah.
how many more trees?
yeah,
Yeah, we had 3 sets of tree removal numbers, and it was upwards of over 100 trees, 130 trees throughout the entire corridor.
Okay.
If we're going to do that. I can't pick off just the north part.
it would be a significant increase,
Yeah.
though. Okay,
We do have that number. We just we'll have to get it.
okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Okay, Michelle?
Okay, first of all, is it correct that when we take out a tree, we put back a tree? We're not just eliminating trees?
No, our plan is to replace trees, especially if we take them out.
Right.
And we would take advantage of the 80/20 funding for that.
Okay, so the plan was to replace them, not to eliminate?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So I'm going to speak on how I feel about Green Bay Road, but I don't really know that it's relevant. I think we have 2 new councilmen coming in, and this vote requires 4, so I'd look forward to hearing your opinion on it, especially since we're planning on pushing this out further. But for what it's worth, I agree with Adam. You got to communicate the heck out of this, and we need help communicating this as a overall, I mean, we have lessons to learn from Clavey, and we should learn those and do whatever we can to communicate effectively. Many ways to do that, many eyes and many thoughts upon it, and the more you do, the better. It's still not going to solve the problem because people are still going to be upset, but I think that's to be expected, but we tell them what we can. I'm a big fan of the Dutch. Our family is Dutch, and we have a sister family in the Netherlands. And if you look at the pictures of the Netherlands in the 1970s, there was no bike infrastructure. The Amsterdam that you know today did not exist. And this, to me, is an opportunity. We talk a lot about how we want to go green and reduce emissions, and none of that will actually happen unless we take steps to make that a possibility. So when I look at a project like Green Bay Road, and I see the option of adding in a bike lane, understanding that there may be some angst on the part of individuals, but we would do that for the greater good of the community, I have to support adding that bike lane, but only if it's not a road to nowhere. If it connects from Lake Cook Road up to Highwood, to the bike trail there, do something that makes sense, be a little more aggressive about what needs to be done in order to make it make sense, and do it for the generation that is growing up, that lived through the pandemic, that could not find enough bicycles in the world, and do something that will help that generation use bikes and the proliferation of electric bikes, right? You can't turn around without being hit by an electric bike these days. but do something so that we're forward-looking in our projects, not backward-looking to, well, we could think of a million reasons why we shouldn't put a bike lane in, but if we have the opportunity, in 20 years, we will look back and wonder what we were thinking in not planning for the future of infrastructure. So, my best to Yumi and Jeff as you will come up here and enjoy this debate, but for what it's worth, that is my 2 cents.
Thank you. Annette?
Okay, so I actually have a lot of questions as well as a couple of statements. I thought we were going to do questions and then statements, but I may as well just get rid of all of it right now. So, just be done with it. First of all, just out of curiosity, when I do 20% of 9.6 million, I get 2.36, and we're putting in 3.8. So why is the city not getting the full 80? I mean, it says that we're putting in 3.8. So my first question is purely financial.
Sure.
It was I believe you said 11.8, and 20% of that is 2.36, and then we're putting in 3.8. So, that's
I thought the
my
whole
first-
project was 15
Total
million.
cost is 15.6 million.
Right.
80% of the total cost.
Right.
Would be the
15%.
federal amount, and 20% of the total cost would be the local share.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're understanding that our numbers are right, that it's for sure 80% of whatever we end up spending is federal money. Okay, so that was one of my questions. Another question really has to do with the termini, and that being your end zones, like we were saying, a bike path that doesn't go to nowhere, right? So if you floated, can we go back to the slide with the red path on it? Okay, so the green part in the middle is the safe part, that if we don't widen it, which we're not going to do, that is wide enough, maybe not for Adam, maybe not for me, but for somebody, that's wide enough under the law, right?
It meets the design requirements.
Okay, and the red, which is the rest of Green Bay Road, to the north and to the south, those take you to a logical termini, right?
Yes, yes.
And that's why you need the yellow part, so that you can meet the process of actually having it go somewhere, although frankly, I'm not sure it does go anywhere, but that's what the state has determined would meet that requirement, right?
The state determined that by extending the goal, the purpose and need of the project as far as it relates to bikes is to provide a continuous bicycle facility. And that yellow portion accomplishes that by taking you off of Green Bay Road, not having to widen the pavement on Green Bay Road. On the south end, it'll eventually connect to the bike path that's being built on Clavey Road this year. So it does connect to a bike path on the south end.
Okay, so then the next question becomes, and this sort of goes to Councilmember Bloomberg's question about safety and recommendations. In a sense, what the state has done here, because, and by the way, I am so impressed that everybody reached out to IDOT and got us back with some answers before this particular discussion took place. So I really thank you for reaching out and getting answers, because we've all seen how slow IDOT can be. All you have to do is live on Clavey Road to answer that question. So terrific kudos on that one. But having said that, the legal way of saying it's not safe on the other parts is to put up signage and direct them on another street, because we cannot legally get in a termini that goes the whole length without widening the street. Is that correct? The only way IDOT will accept this project is if it's that little green portion and then 2 with signage that are taking people on local, small residential streets. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it.
The options are taking them off of Green Bay Road, that's correct, and taking them on those side streets, you're correct, or widening that in that area where it's red and keeping everything on Green Bay Road.
So the little portion answers the question, because it does mean the green portion, that's on Green Bay Road. And anything else to the north and to the south is going on small residential streets with a bike lane, if in fact we so designate. That's the only way to meet the requirement legally.
Not a bike
of it
lane.
being wide enough.
It's not a bike lane.
Yeah, it's
Not-
not a bike lane, you're just
No.
taking them off.
That's correct.
Okay, so there is no bike lane on those other streets. So the actual bike lane, the termini are that small,
The green portion.
the green portion, and the rest of it, it does connect
Mhm.
but through signage, but not on an actual bike lane.
That is correct, and there's a reason for that.
And that reason is the legal liability of no one wanting to advise people to take a bike route that is not safe. And that's what the narrow part of Green Bay would be, am I correct?
No, the reason that we could take them off of Green Bay Road and put them on those yellow marked routes without putting a bike lane is because the traffic on those routes is much less than Green Bay Road, and the speed is lower. So it's a different type of facility, so the requirements are different.
But there still won't be a bike lane on those two portions. There's
No.
signage directing people to go
We're-
that way,
No,
but it's not a bike lane.
we're not required to put a bike lane on those yellow ones, that's correct,
Okay.
yes.
So that's part of my question. And that does meet the objectives in terms of getting us from point A and point B.
That's correct.
Okay, so one minimums in terms of area. Okay. So another question I have has to do with direction of people. And again, I would like to respond to what I think is a very good inquiry by Councilmember Blumberg. And that is the difference, I believe. And I just want to preface this by saying, I'm an avid bicyclist. My brother lives west of Green Bay Road. And whenever I forget to take the path, I end up on Green Bay Road in fear for my life on my bicycle until I can get to the west side because I happen to live east of Green Bay Road. But, and there's nothing that would make me happier than having a bicycle lane. But what I do is I take the path. And I don't know how we're meeting the objective with this small portion of actually having a path. But what I was going to add to this, I think from a legal perspective, in terms of directing people, it's one thing if people go on Green Bay Road and they're on their bicycles and they have no direction to go to our major commercial artery, where the trucks are directed to Green Bay Road. Now we would actually be directing people to Green Bay Road and to be saying to them, okay, so you're coming up from a different community, you're coming up from Evanston, you're coming down from Highwood. Instead of just going on the regular path, we are directing them on a bike path, which I do believe builds up a certain reliance and a security, and people think it's safe to do that. And if they're not familiar with our community, which is part of the whole thing about transportation, then they don't know that they have trucks running right next to them. And I have to tell you, a couple of the options, and I really think we have more work to do. I think we need to look at different alternatives. This was raised by other people during the public forum. Look, I love the path that's the Green Bay Trail. But when we looked at it years ago, did anyone look at maybe adding a portion that was one bike lane so that people could have the unpaved part and widening it slightly, or using a third of it for bikes?
We did,
Did you look at paving it?
yeah.
We did.
So, I mean, and I don't know what the outcome of it is.
We did not pave it.
Okay.
It
And
wasn't.
so that's a question out there, but I do think that there are alternatives. And I think we just have more work to do. But frankly, Green Bay worries me tremendously. This is our major thoroughfare artery for commercial traffic. And one of the things that I think is so special about it is somehow it retains a residential character. Whether it's because of the trees or the neighbors or the cutouts, it is a residential street to those that live there and to those who know Highland Park. And it may be an artery for commercial traffic, but to add bicyclists to that and direct them to that area, I think is taking one's safety into one's own hands. I'm not as wide as Adam, and I didn't go out and measure, don't take that the wrong way. But I can tell you, when I'm riding my bicycle.
How proud tonight.
And I have the saddlebags on either side of my bicycle, I actually will go on torn pavement rather than drive in the street because I'm so afraid. And frankly, I think it is really selfish to think about lowering the speed limit for a couple of months of the year when people could do it. It hurts our commercial and our business areas in downtown Highland Park to even think of lowering the speed limit or to make it more difficult for people to get to downtown Highland Park. So there are just so many reasons that, while I love the idea of a bike path, I think we should look at alternatives, because I love HP Connect and everything else, but Green Bay is not the place for this. From a safety perspective, I think there were two objectives, and safety is not at all addressed in this. And I don't want to lose the feel of Green Bay Road, which is a beautiful residential street that happens to let traffic go down it. But I also don't want to put bicyclists in an unsafe position. We received a lot of letters from the city and from Evanston and from bicycle enthusiasts, and God bless them, but they don't live on Green Bay and they don't live in Highland Park, and they don't know our community. And that, to me, just to give a blanket to any bicycle path because it might have fit, kudos to everybody who researched it. When I thought we were going to widen the street and put in bollards, I was all in favor if we were going to widen the street. But once we decided we are not widening the street and losing the character of our neighborhood, I think this is a disaster from both a legal point of view and a safety point of view.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to disagree with you on one point, and to say safety was not at all in consideration with this, I think is not true, because obviously if people are riding their bikes on Green Bay Road anyhow, because they
How
are.
do we direct them?
No, but I'm just saying, to at least have a demarcation of where it is safe versus go that way versus ride the whole thing, I think does kind of look at
Ooh,
safety.
Nancy, I had one more, Mayor, I had
go
one
for
more
it.
point. I'm really sorry, but along those lines,
Uh-huh.
in order to dissuade people or to encourage them to use those lesser areas, first of all, I don't think anybody will leave that main path. A serious cyclist who's really going from point A to point B, they're going to fly up Green Bay Road. There is no way they're going on Broadview, figuring out how to get back, or going on Oakwood and figuring out how to get back. A serious person is going to do that. A not serious person is going to take the path
Right.
that's not paved.
Right.
So that's number one. If we're going to do this, I'd want to fine the heck out of anybody, and I'd want someone sitting there and policing it so people don't ride their bikes, because that's how worried I am about putting people on the street.
But you can't, because
But
it's
they're there
legally allowed.
And that's why,
It's legal now for them to ride on, you
but I don't
can't.
want to encourage,
But you can't fine people if they're following the law. Illinois allows people to ride their bikes
Anyway.
on streets. Yeah.
Anywhere except the highway.
Okay, Kim Stone, and then Andres Tapia, and then I think we kind of got to take this home because we got stuff to do in addition. Thanks,
Thank
Go.
you. So as Councilmember Holloman pointed out very clearly, we need to start somewhere to build out our infrastructure for future generations and to improve multimodal transportation. As we've all said, there are cyclists already using Green Bay. With new pavement, there will be more cyclists using this route. Climate change deserves urgent action. Transportation is the top source of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. It impacts about 30% of greenhouse gas emissions are from transportation. If we add facilities that enable people to more safely use cleaner modes of transportation, it'll help us meet the challenge of addressing climate change. A bike lane is an amenity that will benefit everyone. It improves connectivity. It may encourage people who would otherwise drive to bike instead, thereby reducing traffic on Green Bay Road. The detours onto Oakwood and Broadview may or may not be utilized, but that would be similar to the current bike detour that goes right out here from St. John's and detours people at Laurel over to Linden. Bike lanes help businesses. They are shown to have more people, when they're biking, they stop at more shops than people who are driving by in cars. And it improves safety for all road users. I think Manny said it accurately in Public Works specific language. But research has shown that bike lanes increase the safety of not only cyclists, but also pedestrians and drivers using the street. There are going to be people biking on Green Bay Road. They're there now. We add a bike lane, it's going to make it safer for everybody. This is a priority of the Move HP plan, and the reconstruction of Green Bay Road provides us an opportunity to add this now. So I really am strongly in favor of including the bike lane in this project and figuring out the details of how to do it, in whether it needs to be a detour or what it needs to be specifically in those two sections.
Thank you. Andres?
Yeah, in looking at all the data and listening to all the public hearings that have been happening, clearly, it's not a clear-cut answer. And this is a major thoroughfare in Highland Park. And even looking at this map, it just looks like a piecemeal, trying to make it work, and it doesn't really make sense. Then we would go through all this effort for something that is not really a bike lane, that we're expecting people to come off Green Bay Road to the yellow when they're going to go through the red anyway. So, what are we accomplishing here? Now, I believe that we need to prepare for climate change. I believe in our plan, we want to see more cycling, but we have a bunch of streets in Highland Park. We have a lot of ways to get north-south. We have the Green Bay Trail, which actually should be looked at because it was built as a trail for walking and biking. Now, I think we should revisit whether we should put a paved lane within that, broaden it a little bit. Some people might not like it, but a lot of people don't like this. And when I look at the neighbors' concern about this, that weighs heavily on me, because this is their street. This is where they bought their house. This is where their assets and equity lie. And if they feel that it won't be as safe, or it's going to get in the way, and all the different things that they have been concerned, let's say we could debate point by point that, well, that's not true, or don't worry about that, worry about this. But if the neighborhood on Green Bay Road is feeling overwhelmingly resistance to this, we have to listen to that. Now, we may find out that once this is nicely paved and there's no bike lane, let's say, that some of the concerns that have been brought up by my colleagues materialize, and maybe putting a bike lane may make it safer. Well, why don't we wait for the data? Why don't we wait for the actual experience? Why don't we call this a case study here to say, all right, let's try without a bike lane, no harm, no foul. Because we're going to still do the street, we're going to still pave it, it's still going to be as wide as it's going to be, and it doesn't lock us into no bike lane in the future. But let's have some data that's Green Bay data, not some actuarial table on accidents, and also not some data from the Department of Transportation that's federal aggregate data. Let's find out.
Data.
But let's find out what the data is for Green Bay Road in Highland Park.
It
Data.
will be how many
On
people are
accidents,
killed.
or dangers, or, dangerous situations, or near misses. We're speculating that there may be less safety, but we don't know that yet. And there's legitimate points of view that it's less safe, and other legitimate points that it's more safe if we have lane or no lane. In other words, how do we decide in the abstract? We can go so far with data, but I say we have an opportunity to try it without a lane, find out what the real use is. Are people speeding? Are people swerving? Are they going over the center lane? And then we can determine, without much more effort, to say, well, maybe painting a lane in that green part may help us. But I don't know if we have to determine that now.
Okay, thank you. Tony, you one more?
Just a couple of things briefly. Respectfully to Councilmember Littlewer, with respect to the red areas that you've described now as potentially being more dangerous, they're not going to be more dangerous than they are now. They will be repaved, but you're going to get whatever number of cyclists you're getting. We already have cyclists on Green Bay Road. Those areas currently don't have bike lanes now, and they won't have bike lanes in the future. They're not going to suddenly become less safe. That's a fact. With respect to further research, the reason that I asked the questions I asked is that there is a wealth of expert data. This is not abstract, and I can't disagree with your qualifications of this information more strongly. This isn't abstract. This is expert testimony. This is expert information on people who are basing their opinions on a wealth of information over the years, over many parts of the country, and it is therefore directly relevant to our decision now as to how we're going to spend money, and are we going to do something that will have value going into the future. I understand a lot of people don't like this. That's a risk with every project that comes in front of us. The amount of mail that we've gotten on both sides of this in the community is about equal. And I understand the concerns about the impacts on properties on Green Bay Road, which is why generally we have agreed not to widen Green Bay Road. But there is nothing about segregating bike lanes that's going to change the width of the road or the value of the property, but it will improve the safety of cyclists on those areas of the road.
That's it?
That's it.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to do a quick straw poll just to kind of help you have some direction, because we have really had a nice, robust conversation about this. Appreciate the data, and again, to the public, I appreciate all the input that you've provided. I'm just going to start at the end. Annette, you're a no, right?
I'm a no.
Michelle? Yes. Tony?
I'm a yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Adam?
No.
Andres?
No.
And I'm a yes. So with 4, I don't know what you guys want to do with that. but it sounds like there's an opportunity for us to do some very careful planning and important communication. And obviously, we need to talk further, I think, and I agree so much with Michelle Holloman and appreciate her strong point about, it's not just this little chunk, but what are you doing to build an appropriate network? And how do you get it down to Lake Cook and connect it to that Cook County path? And where do you take it? How do you get it up to Highwood and so forth? So I know Bike Walk Plan, or whatever we're calling it, Move HB, has looked at all of this, but connectivity is critical to our community, and it's a great way to move people forward if we are trying to help our businesses and connect our neighborhoods. Michelle has her hand up.
Yeah, just want to call attention to the fact that you can ask for my opinion, but I'm only here for 2 more meetings, and as well as Adam, and this is a long-term implication.
Absolutely.
I would say that you include the views of Yumi and Jeff and exclude Adam and I for the future, because it doesn't make sense at this point to base a decision on our votes.
The great news is I have you till May 8th, and this is the reflection of this current council. And until
saying.
Steve explains to me how to correctly pronounce Sina Dai, we are here. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Did I? Excellent. Glad to hear it. Okay, so thanks, everybody, for your patience. I am going to recess this committee of the whole because we are going into closed after the council meeting. I'm going to ask that we talk about Soul Smart in 2 weeks because it's already 7:45, and we have so many awesome patient people in the back to celebrate with us, so can we do that? What?
Why wouldn't you just adjourn the committee of the whole?
And then go into
We could do closed at council meeting.
All right,
Right.
then
Yeah.
seeking a motion to adjourn committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay. With that, we will call to order the city
Mayor, if we
council.
could maybe just take a 3-minute recess just for AV purposes. We need to change
3-minute
meeting.
recess
Okay.
for AV purposes. Thank you. And then we will. I appreciate it. To call to order the city council meeting for the city of Highland Park, April 10th, 2023. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia?
Present.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Here.
Councilmember Stone?
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg? Here. Councilmember Holloman?
Here.
Councilmember Lidower?
Present.
Mayor Rotering?
Here, everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting held March 13th, 2023?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are,
I'm going to vote present on that.
as you were not here.
I was not here.
Thank you very much. And with that, the minutes are approved. I'm seeking a motion to approve the warrant list.
So moved.
Second?
Any comments or questions on the warrant list?
Nope.
Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman?
Aye.
Councilmember Lidower?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays, and the warrant list is approved. We will now move on to the report of the mayor. I do have one reappointment this evening that I'm seeking your consensus on, and that is to reappoint James Lynch to the Cultural Arts Advisory Group.
Yes.
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 Yes?
That'll require a motion.
That will require a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Can we just, all in
Vice
favor,
vote.
say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, James, for rejoining the Cultural Arts Advisory Group. I have several proclamations this evening. The first one is regarding Tree City USA Arbor Day proclamation. In Highland Park, we're very proud of our longstanding commitment to the preservation of our urban forest. In 2023, the Arbor Foundation named the city of Highland Park a Tree City USA for the 43rd year. And this evening, we recognize this honor and the upcoming very fun Arbor Day celebration. Ron Bannon, I'm going to read the proclamation as you come to the podium. Whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of the business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees help reduce the erosion of our bluffs and ravines by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas Highland Park has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation for 43 consecutive years and desires to continue its tree planting ways, and whereas Highland Park is hosting an Arbor Day celebration on Saturday, April 29th, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Ravinia Festival West parking lot, where the city, park district, local organizations, and businesses will offer a wide variety of environmental resources, along with more than 600 live native trees and shrubs ready for planting. Now therefore, I, Nancy Rotering, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council of Highland Park, do hereby proclaim our support of Arbor Day and the Tree City USA program in the City of Highland Park, and urge all residents to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and to support our city's forestry program. Further, I urge all residents to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Take it away, Ron. Do you have anything you'd like to share?
Just thank you, Mayor. And we are an original Tree City USA city.
Wow.
So
Very cool.
we're very proud of that.
And I would just urge everyone to check out the city website regarding the event on Saturday, April 29th. There are all kinds of cool events planned, including Touch a Truck, I believe, and meeting birds of prey. So, very cool. All right, thanks, Ron. Let me give you this. Thank you. We have some special guests in the audience today. April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, an opportunity to celebrate the richness of perspective and experience that neurodiverse individuals contribute to our community. I have a proclamation in recognition of Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month that I'll read, and then I'm going to invite some friends up to accept the proclamation. Whereas autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a lifelong developmental condition that typically appears during early childhood and can impact a person's social skills, communication, relationships, and self-regulation. And whereas the autism experience is different for everyone, ASD is defined by a certain set of behaviors and is often referred to as a spectrum condition that affects people differently and to varying degrees. And whereas about 1 in 54 children has been identified with ASD, and it is 4.5 times more common in boys than in girls. And whereas people with ASD often have problems with social, emotional, and communication skills, they might repeat certain behaviors and might not want to change in their daily activities. Many people with ASD also have different ways of learning, paying attention, or reacting to things. And whereas while there is currently no known single cause of autism, early diagnosis helps a person receive resources that can support the choices and opportunities to live fully. And whereas during the month of April, we strive to promote autism awareness, acceptance, inclusion, and self-determination for all, and assure that each person with ASD is provided an opportunity to achieve the highest possible quality of life. Now therefore, I, Nancy Rotering, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council of the City of Highland Park, do hereby proclaim the month of April as Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Yay! And it's now my pleasure to welcome Diana Barriga, Sir Ian Leroy, Shira Raviv Schwartz, and Maddox Rosenblum to accept this proclamation and share some comments if they wish.
So this is Maddox. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Here's
Any
the
questions?
Hi, Maddox. Thank you for
Hi.
joining us.
I am Max Ethan Rosenblum. I go to Edgewood.
What grade are you in?
6th grade.
And what's your favorite subject?
Usually social science.
Yeah, what do you like about social studies?
Usually history. Usually history.
What do you like about history?
Mostly I do like history.
Yeah. What do you like to learn in history class? Do you like to learn about places or people?
Usually places.
Is there anywhere that you want to go that's special?
Tokyo, Japan.
Me too.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to go to Tokyo?
Because there's a lot of technology there. A lot of cool stuff there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
really want to meet tonight? The mayor.
The mayor.
So happy to meet you, Maddox. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, let's focus.
Hello, hello everyone. My name is Sir Ian. I am 14 years old. I like to draw, play on my tablet, and be silly loud. One of the things I love to do the most is make everybody happy. Is I do things by singing. Everyone clap your hands. Hooray! Okay. I want to thank you, my family, friends, and the community and for caring about. Also, to thank you, Sarah. She always has my back and fights for my inclusion, excitation. I love you, Sarah.
Okay.
People with like me want to be loved, treated, kind. Thank you, Miss Missy. I know. Auntie Dawn, Miss Nancy, Smiley. Yes, it's okay. Down us, down on us,
Ian's voice.
down us, use from heaven, the end. Thank you, 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 thank you.
So, and I just want to thank our special friends for coming, Maddox and Sir Ian, and also to let everybody know that while this is Autism Awareness Month and it's April, we need to continue autism awareness, always, all the time. And several years ago, I went to, Chief Dogman invited me to speak to the police officers and update them on autism awareness, especially after the Parkland shooting when first responders needed to enter classrooms and give instructions to students, put your hands where I can see them, and many of them with sensory needs put their hands in places that felt more comfortable for sensory purposes. So we need to continue to update our first responders, both, all, and community members, people in our community, in stores, in schools, everywhere. So this is April, but this is an awareness that needs to happen always. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Can we shake hands?
This way, this way.
Maddox, come this way.
Okay. Sir Ian, I haven't seen you. So good to see you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, Diane? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today. I know it was a long meeting. Everybody hung in there.
I should have gone first.
Continuing on with the report of the mayor. April 23rd to 29th marks National Crime Victims' Rights Week, when we honor the victims of crime and the professionals who support them. The 2023 NCVRW theme is Survivor Voices, Elevate, Engage, Affect Change. Centering and amplifying the voices of survivors is critical to creating a culture where victims are heard, believed, and supported, which in turn results in policy changes that make communities across our nation safer. Over the past 9 months, we've been inspired by the courage of survivors of the Highland Park shooting in building resiliency, supporting neighbors, and advocating for the change we need on a state and national level to prevent another community from experiencing similar tragedy. I'll now read our proclamation. Whereas the term victim is more than just a label and has legal standing and protections that go along with it. Whereas Crime Victims' Rights Acts passed in Illinois and at the federal level guarantee victims the right to meaningfully participate and use their voice in the criminal justice processes. And whereas victims service providers, advocates, law enforcement advisors, attorneys, and other allied professionals can help survivors find their justice by enforcing these rights. And whereas the right to provide an impact statement ensures that victims' voices are considered in court during the sentencing and, when applicable, restitution processes. And whereas including and elevating the voices of survivors makes certain that they are heard and seen and creates a path to forging and sustaining community trust. And whereas engaging survivors creates responses and services that are credible, meaningful, and centered on individual needs. And whereas survivors' lived experience can serve as a catalyst for implementing innovative programs, shifting existing programs in new directions, and changing policies or practices that prevent survivors from accessing services or pursuing justice. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit to listening to crime survivors in every space where decisions are made that could impact them. And whereas the City of Highland Park is hereby dedicated to amplifying the voices of survivors and creating an environment where survivors have the confidence that they will be heard, believed, and supported. Now therefore, I, Nancy Rotering, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council of the City of Highland Park, do hereby proclaim April 23rd to 29, 2023 as Crime Victims' Rights Week. And this year, it's more important than ever that we support survivors in sharing their stories and advocating for change. It's likewise imperative that we remain attentive to the toll that this can take on mental health. The consequences of trauma from gun violence, intimate partner violence, and other crimes are far-reaching, and they can be triggered by news reporting and current events. Seeking support to manage the ebb and flow of trauma responses is vital. The trained navigators at 211 Lake County can assist community members in accessing local multilingual crisis and long-term mental health care and support. Dial 211, text your zip code to 898-211, or visit 211lakecounty.org. Additionally, the city's Resiliency Division team provides case management and resource navigation assistance to victims of the Highland Park shooting. Visit cityhpil.com to learn more about these services. My last proclamation is regarding monarch butterflies. As a city, we are proud to support the crucial role that pollinators play in ensuring a healthy ecosystem by renewing our commitment to the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. Highland Park joins local communities across the country in taking action to create habitat for the monarch butterfly and other pollinators and to provide public education and advocacy. I will now read the proclamation about monarch butterflies. Whereas over the past couple of decades, the migrating population of monarch butterflies has plummeted due to habitat loss and environmental stress from an estimated 1 billion to record low numbers, and whereas the near extermination of milkweed, the only plant on which monarchs lay their eggs, is a prime reason for the alarming decline. We must not delay any longer if we hope to reverse this trend. The iconic monarch's migration route from Mexico to Canada includes Highland Park, Illinois, and it's within our ability and power to take action to help save the monarch butterfly. And whereas we know that one source of hope for monarch survival is that individuals, institutions, and organizations can make a difference by including monarch-friendly native plants, especially milkweed, in their landscapes. And whereas, furthermore, concerned citizens and organizations across the country are joining forces to create monarch way stations to sustain the insects along their annual migration routes. Now therefore, I, Nancy Rotering, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council of Highland Park, do hereby proclaim that Highland Park is a monarch way station and urge all residents of the community to do their part by planting milkweed, the exclusive food source for monarch larvae, so that every parcel of property in Highland Park may contribute to the survival of the monarch butterfly. I have one piece of other business. I know we've had a lot to discuss this evening and appreciate everyone's attention. April is Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, also known as Blue Kids Month. Each year, the Lake County Children's Advocacy Center, which is a division of Lake County State's Attorney's Office, encourages Lake County governments, businesses, community organizations, and residents to learn about ways to protect children and prevent child abuse. As part of this initiative, the Highland Park Police Department has created an informative video in partnership with LCCAC, which we really encourage everyone to watch. Special thanks to Officer Reyes Montemayor, who produced the video, Detective Amanda Duchek, Sergeant Jimmy Eldridge, and Officer Amy Hindman for their work on this important project. Visit cityhpil.com/bluekids to view the video and to access resources to talk with your children about these important topics, including child safety, abuse prevention, bullying prevention, and more. And that is it for the report of the mayor. Thank you so much for that time this evening. We will now continue to business from city staff and our 2023 major projects Q1 updates.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Included in the packet is our first quarter update of major projects for the year. Highlights for this first quarter are reflected in red, so it should be hopefully an easy read. But for public information, all the major projects for our annual work plan are set forth. They're organized by department. You can see the project lead, the tasks that are planned to be undertaken throughout the year, and the estimated timeline of when those are going to be updated. And then we provide updates every quarter, and we regularly review and update that report accordingly. And then here's just a snapshot of total number of projects is 120. And we break down how they are categorized according to the city's 4 major priorities. And so where you can see that the vast majority of these do fall under the community vibrancy, it's really not uncommon that they would, because most of these are special projects. Whereas if you go through the budget, you'll see the majority of the day-to-day initiatives. For example, 24 million in infrastructure investment falls under the infrastructure priority. Public safety is another one of our key priorities. And of course, everything falls under fiscal stability. So happy to answer any questions you may have at this time, or any members of our staff team.
I always love looking at the progress chart. It's something to behold. Any comments or questions? No? Thank you. Absolutely encourage everyone to check this out on the city website. It's unbelievable. Any business from the council? Okay. Next item is business from the public. This is for residents wishing to be heard regarding items not listed on tonight's agenda. Do we have any business from the public? Okay, we will continue on to our scheduled business. Items 1 through 22 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. I am seeking a motion to approve items 1 through 22.
I move to approve 1 through 22.
Second.
Any comments or questions on 1 through 22?
Got one comment.
What's your comment?
On item number 4, which is the food truck item, I had spoken with Gita in advance of the meeting about concerns that I had heard about the emissions from the food trucks, and I understand, and Gita spoke with Carolyn about this as well, I understand it's not feasible at this time to put them on some other source of power during the food truck event in order to eliminate those emissions, but I just want to make sure, since this is an automatic renewal, in future years, that is an issue that we look at annually, so that if another option should become available, we can correct that.
Yes, absolutely. We have identified it as an issue that we will review.
Great, thank you.
I have a comment on number 4.
Okay.
You know, I like the idea of trying out a French market over here in the lot, but I'm wondering, as we experiment with this, how much we're involving the businesses on a Sunday. So because the idea of having, you know, an event is to not only the event be a centerpiece, but also the spillover into our business district. So Sunday tends to be a quieter day, a lot of stores are closed, so I'm just questioning, you know, whether that's going to have a spillover effect that we want. I'm all for trying it out, and I think in and of itself would be a good idea, but given our objective here, I just wonder about that.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor.
Sure.
It's a very good point. And so we are going to continue to communicate with all the businesses and the property owners about all the different activities and initiatives that are being coordinated at the lot. Some of them are being held, such as this, when some businesses are closed. And so we provide them the information so they can make a decision on their own if it's worth it for them to open, given the increased traffic that's going to be in the downtown district. The other thing that we do very strategically is to communicate with all attendees of that special event, all the businesses that are not only in our downtown district, but in all of Highland Park. So the goal is there's a lot of synergy and energy taking place at that event, and we hope that people are going to come back, support the businesses, know that they're there as well. So that's the other component that's conducted. And we'll regularly conduct evaluation and feedback with attendees of that special event, as well as with our business community to get their feedback about how do you feel about the event? Have you seen increased traffic? Do you have recommendations? Would you like to participate in the event as well?
Great. Thank you. I just want to highlight on item 20, congratulations and thanks to Chief Shruggy on getting a grant to address this purchase of new self-contained breathing apparatus at a significant savings to the city. Thank you for your hard work on that, Chief. We do have a motion and a second on items 1 through 22. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rodring.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 22 have been approved. Item 23, resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with the Lakota Group for the plan and design of a permanent special event venue. Do you want to present on this?
We do have a short PowerPoint, if you're interested,
Okay.
that our staff can take us through, if you like.
Thank you.
Yeah, Assistant Manager Aaron Jason.
Good evening. Open here. So we do have quite a few items. I'm used to handing this off to other people to present, and I realized I didn't turn on the clicker for myself, so sorry about that. So we want to talk to you tonight about entering into an agreement with the Lakota Group. And we're recommending this based on the strength of the firm's experience and expansive approach to community engagement and outreach, and their previous work within the city. Understanding that the community, they have a multi-phase design process that includes multiple design proposals in a lengthy refinement period that incorporates several opportunities for community engagement, and the Lakota's established success in the community with focused planning projects especially is relevant because any future build out of the lot will need to be in a place that is viewed and used as a community resource, even when there is no formal programming. So that is the task we have set forward for them. What we're asking for you is to approve a professional service agreement to evaluate and design a permanent outdoor community gathering and event space at the lot. And approval of this item does not constitute approval of a permanent build-out in the future. This is just for the design phasing. And should the city pursue a permanent build-out, the plan will serve as the vision and the guide for advancement. The plan will detail a concise and measurable set of goals and objectives to provide direction for the city council, staff, and the community. The plan will rely on illustrations, examples, and site plans, allowing the city to seek grants and budget-required funding for future years. The Lakota Group's proposal also indicated fiscal responsibility for the construction planning process, and representatives discussed previous success in writing and obtaining grants and developing phased construction. And we would consider that for budgetary and programmatic needs for a multi-year construction plan to minimize the impact on the calendar of events. Given the strength of their proposal and their interview, their deep understanding of current and future planning for the district, and the city's prior experience working with the Lakota Group, staff is confident that the team will be successful in producing a community-informed plan for the lot that, if activated by council approval in the future, will position the space for long-term vibrancy. So there was a lot of questions about the history of the lot. How did we get to this point? So this is a couple bullet points on the evolution of the lot. And this started as part of the strategic plan update. In Q3 and Q4 of 2021, the city conducted focus groups via Zoom and then in-person community outreach at events. Feedback from stakeholders, including residents, businesses in all categories, and property owners, indicated a strong desire for a community gathering space and more special events downtown. The purpose of the lot, events, entertainment, and the associated marketing is to improve the economic vitality of the city of Highland Park by attracting residents and visitors alike to downtown Highland Park, as well as encouraging local spending and creating a sense of community through its promotion and intentional placemaking. Placemaking, or creating a sense of place and a destination within a community, is a recognized best practice in business development that allows for capitalizing on a local community's assets and potential, intending to create public spaces that promote vitality and improve quality of life. The lot supports the city's core priority of community vibrancy, which creates an environment where businesses can flourish and support attraction efforts for future growth and reinvestment in community. This was before my time, but multiple spaces were looked at before settling on the current temporary site of the lot, which is in St. John's. So in response to the community's desire for an event space, staff began exploring opportunities to augment the existing calendar of special events. A limiting factor was the lack of dedicated event space capable of hosting mid to large crowds in downtown Highland Park. City staff evaluated several locations in the CBD that were identified as potentially underutilized spaces that could be repurposed for special events. During this consideration, they took into consideration impact on the community and businesses, such as the loss of public parking, impact on the possible redevelopment of the property, financial impact on the city, including potential revenue streams, such as collaboration with the Park District, grant funding, fundraising campaigns, and private rentals. Similar initiatives from neighboring communities, planning and development processes required, infrastructure needs such as water, electric, landscape design, etc., sustainability, and accessibility. Draft proposals and site plans were prepared for the 2nd Street South Lot and the St. John's North Lot. Feedback was solicited from downtown property owners and businesses. At that time, 14 objections to the Elm Place 2nd Street South parking lot were put on record due to limited parking on 2nd Street and interference with deliveries and trash service for the First Street businesses. Again, during this collection time, there were no objections to the St. John's North lot. The Downtown Highland Park Alliance property owners were consulted for their feedback, and there were no objections to the site. Police regularly monitor the St. John's North lot. The north portion of the lot has 81 parking spaces and 56 in the south portion, which we used as a temporary space last year. On average, only 25 to 30 vehicles had been parking in the total combined St. John's parking lots. And that was back in 2021 when we first started this. It was true in 2022, and it continues today. We see that same average, really showing us that this is an underutilized lot. With respect to public safety, the fire department did not express any concerns about the use of the site, both in the short or for the long term. And community development just suggested that the city evaluate the impact on parking as one of the ways that we look at the city's key economic development tools, recommending that the city explore ways to accommodate some parking. The North St. John's lot is underutilized, as we mentioned, and the number of regular users can be shifted either to a smaller lot on the north end, which is something we have asked Lakota to look at as part of this review, with a new entrance, or to other nearby parking lots, including the Central Business District East lot. So just real quick numbers, they are without on-street parking spaces. So just looking at lots and garages, there are currently 1,841 parking spaces in the lots and the garages, and that includes the 23 new spots in the Albion. So that's a significant number of spaces. If we lose the full 81, we would be down to just a little bit, I clicked, a little bit under 17,000, or a little bit under 1,800. Good grief, I'm sorry, I need water. So here is the lot, photo courtesy of Mark Hirsch. The St. John's North lot is best suited to create a festival-type environment that would feel fresh and create opportunities for family fun, especially given the pandemic-fueled influx of new families in Highland Park. It offers a variety of benefits because of its accessible location, proximity to parking, the expanse of flat, level surface, and the positioning on the east side of downtown Highland Park with restaurants and retail businesses within walking distance. The space allows for an entertainment stage with seating, tables for dining, and room for vendors. And it has natural barriers to allow for alcohol service at events. It also offers excellent visibility from the train and for commuters, and good visibility for pedestrians along Central Avenue. The site provides flexibility to host various events for various demographics and offers the opportunity to expand. Its size could incorporate grassy areas to create a park-like environment with enhancements including a playground and/or other interactive features as requested by residents. The space provides an entertainment stage with seating, dining tables, and a vendor room. Additional site improvements would encourage individuals to enjoy the space with interactive elements. It's important to note that Port Clinton would continue to be a gathering space to the west and be used for smaller scale events as it is now, such as the Bitter Jester Music Festival's primary nights. Additionally, the St. John's North lot provides the opportunity to expand into the north end of the lot for more significant events to mainstream parking if desired. So the next couple slides, we want to show you a couple examples of these type of spaces and what we could do at the lot that are being done in other communities. This right here is the Hubbard Woods project in Winnetka, and this was one that was designed by Lakota. So in considering the location, staff envisioned what the St. John's North lot could become if it was permanently built out, and what its role could be in the revitalization of the surrounding district with a more beneficial user experience while also promoting synergy with nearby businesses. Since the reopening of the redeveloped park here in Hubbard Woods, the surrounding Hubbard Woods Commercial District has seen marked improvement, including the opening of new businesses and spaces with persistent vacancy. As I mentioned on the next few slides, we're going to show you a few other spaces and just remind you that we're not looking for approval to actually do the action tonight. We're just looking for approval to move forward with a design similar to these. And again, with lots of community engagement. This overhead view of Hubbard Wood Park, for example, shows a stage, seating, picnic area, playground, restroom, storage, and more. These are all great examples, too, of how we could have this space activated, not just during the main events during the lot season, but 365 days a year. And this, actually, I'm going to go back one. This last one here, this is the Everett's Park in Highwood, and they're home to their Wednesday market, which has given Highwood a lot of notoriety. And so when we talk about the artisan market, perhaps on Sundays, we're excited because that's another way to activate this space on a regular basis, a consistent basis, consistently bringing foot traffic to Highland Park, just as increased density in housing brings consistent foot traffic. Having these consistent events gets you regular foot traffic from new and different groups. So for the RFP process, in 2022, the city and Ripple Public Relations gathered public and business feedback from the lot attendees, residents, downtown businesses, and property owners, as well as debriefed with city staff, which indicated a desire to continue events at the lot. This was shared with the City Council in February of 2023 for review and policy feedback. The feedback indicated a desire to continue events at the lot in 2023 and explore building the site into a permanent park-like entertainment space in future years. In anticipation of this policy direction, the city issued an RFP for design and project planning services. At a minimum, the RFP asked for the following: the plan and design of an ADA accessible, flexible, multi-seasonal, multi-generational, park-like community event and alfresco dining place with interactive spaces, a covered stage, power, sound, storage, natural barriers, a buffer from the train tracks. A sustainable landscape design using native trees and plantings that support pollinator habitats and native birds. Decorative lighting design that also enhances security. Easy access for vendor vehicles, maintenance, and deliveries. Shade structures, a gateway, and grant assistance. There was also more things we asked for, but I don't think we have that much time to go through every single line item. So we received 7 great proposals. From there, we interviewed 4. An interdepartmental panel reviewed the submittals, participated in the interviews, and recommended 2 firms for contract consideration. At that point in time, City Manager Newkirk, myself, Business Development Manager Hirsch, and Communications Manager Bennett carefully examined scoring and qualitative feedback from the panel. And I did receive a question last week about the scoring. So one of the other groups did have a higher score when you look at the score chart, and that is because one of our interview panel members was not able to attend the Lakota interview, and the way it goes through our system, it just automatically gave them a 0 for that user. So when we inputted, even if they had given them a 3, and actually even if we had given them a 2.5 out of 5 for every category for Lakota would have been ahead. So the Lakota group was selected as they demonstrated a strong understanding of the purpose and goals for the space, particularly concerning business development and attraction. Their community engagement proposal was one of the best I've ever seen. It included consistent and continual engagement where the people are at. So at the lot for the entire season, at Food Truck Thursdays, at the farmers market, at other community events, as well as all the ways we already know that they have performed in the past with us to engage with our community and our stakeholders. It was very impressive. Lakota also brings with them a deep understanding of the entire central business district and the community as a whole, allowing them to design a site that fits into the overall community design plan while considering future growth and vision. Lakota displayed the ability and desire to create a space that could host large-scale community events when it was activated for those, but also invite us to use it as an interactive community space 365 days a year. And we talked about that. So first, there's the scope of work. What happens in phase 1? The scope of the project includes community engagement, as we talked about, with stakeholder meetings and focus groups, on-site outreach at the lot events for the entirety of the season, and pop-up opportunities for community members to share feedback and insights. Phase 2 would really concentrate on design and development. So what is that? A preferred plan refinement, staff review meetings, a 3D modeling and renderings, and an open house event. So a lot of work on top of work to make sure they get it right. And then scope of work, phase 3, that's the final plan. The final deliverable will include city council presentation and the final plan. And as an individual unit, we'll be able to take that plan in the future, should the council choose to vote for a more permanent build out, and directly apply for funding. And there are a lot of grants out there and a lot of the applicants here who put in for this talked about the OSLOT grant and some of the other real specific ones. Lakota Group has extensive knowledge and experience applying for multiple different grants that would apply towards this project in the future. That was very attractive to us. So our recommendation, as I read at the beginning, is to approve a professional service agreement with the Lakota Group. It's recommended based on the strength of the firm's experience and expansive approach to community engagement and outreach, previous work within the city, understanding of the community, and a multi-phase design process that includes multiple design proposals and a lengthy refinement period that incorporates several opportunities for community engagement. Lakota Group's established success in the community-focused planning is especially relevant because any future build-out of the lot will need to be a place that is viewed and used as a community resource, even when there's no formal programming. Approval of this item, again, does not constitute approval of a permanent build-out in the future. Should the city pursue a permanent build-out, the plan will serve as the vision and guide for advancement. The plan will detail a concise and measurable set of goals and objectives to provide direction for the city council, staff, and community. The plan will rely on illustrations, examples, and site plans, allowing the city to seek grants, as we discussed, and budget for the required funding in future years. Given the strength of the proposal and interview, deep understanding of the current and future planning of the district, and the city's prior experience, we're confident, as I mentioned before, that they will be successful in this venture. As presented in the proposed agreement, the project budget is just under $70,000. The city has budgeted $15,000 for design services in the fiscal year 2023 budget, and the remainder is anticipated to be allocated from existing budgeted funds for the lot for 2023, offset by sponsorship and the recently received DCEO grant in the amount of $143,000. So what are our next steps? If approved, phase 1 of the project will begin in the next few weeks and will be finalized by December 31st. Again, that is that extensive community engagement process that we discussed. And what can we expect for the lot in 2023? So first, the 2022 season. We had 17 events. Their performance in 2022, its inaugural year, and its potential to impact on our downtown is staggering to me as someone who has an economic development background. This is placemaking at its finest. The lot hosted 17 events, 2 large-scale 2-day events, 6 mid-scale 1-day events, and a series of 9 smaller-scale weekly events. The lot events attracted approximately 22,000 visitors to downtown Highland Park, and more than 40 Highland Park businesses directly participated. The lot's attraction value is expected to grow exponentially as it becomes a destination like Food Truck Thursdays, the Chamber Sidewalk Sale, and the beloved Port Clinton Art Fair. These numbers prove that events are a powerful attraction tool to bring people downtown. As I mentioned before, just as increased residential density anecdotally brings new and continuous foot traffic to the CBD, intentional placemaking such as the lot will draw people here. It will also generate interest from new businesses to invest in Highland Park and is an opportunity for existing local businesses and the community to grow their customer base and provide exposure to draw customers back to Highland Park for future business transactions. And lastly, here is that calendar of events. We can never plug what's happening in Highland Park too much. So this is the 2023 calendar of events for the lot. It features 7 events between June and October and a weekly artisan market that you all approved this evening. Thank you. From July 2nd through September 24th. This year, the lot will also be the host to the grand finale of the Bitter Jester Music Festival, the Sunday of the Taste of Highland Park weekend. While this event is sponsored by the city, it is not a city event and represents the potential for future event growth at the space. And that's what I have for now. I'm ready for questions.
That was unbelievable in terms of how comprehensive your report was. We really appreciate it. Tony, I think you had a comment, and Kim, and I see Michelle and Annette and Andres. Okay, so.
Just very briefly, I wanted to echo what you said about the Lakota Group. We've worked with them on the city council in the past. They've done some work for the Park District. They're a tremendous group, and I'm not surprised about your comments regarding their presentation. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Kim? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Stowe.
No problem.
So Great presentation. I really commend staff for their vision in putting the space together for the lot last year. I've got no concerns about the lot. I've got no concerns about the Lakota Group being selected as the potential contractor. I think the lot has been an asset as a temporary event space, but I'm concerned about something that you said, Aaron, in your presentation, which was if activated by a future council with funding. I don't want another study that's not completed and then becomes outdated. I think we need a comprehensive design for the entire downtown. We need to take into consideration the need for an event space like this, the planned library expansion, current and future parking needs, and the future development of the memorial. The design should be done in a coherent way rather than piecemeal, so we can figure out the most efficient way to meet all of these needs in the space that we have available. And I'm concerned we may be moving forward with the design of one of these elements without considering the other pieces. If we think comprehensively and creatively, we may be able to come up with another option. We have a streetscape plan, but it is old. We spent a lot of money on that streetscape plan, and our downtown is dated. We might be better served by refreshing that streetscape plan to include some event space like the lot, and providing the design consultant with a budget upfront for what we can spend to actually activate that space, so that we can ensure that we can implement the plan in a timely way. This type of project's rarely done, so I think we could probably consider using reserves to pay for the build-out. But I'm just concerned about doing another plan, another design, without budgeting money for implementation.
Thank you.
Not exactly a question, more of a statement.
Thank you. And I think it was 2009 when we worked with Lakota for 3 years to come up with a master plan for the downtown that took an unbelievable amount of time, had all kinds of input, and now is sort of sitting somewhere. So I appreciate your comments. Councilmember Holland.
Yeah, I am going to set a record here and agree with Kim completely on this. I know, in 1 second. No, all joking aside, we have a downtown streetscape by Lakota, which was phenomenal, that we spent a lot of time on and now is sitting on a shelf. So I think this, as much as I appreciate the lot and what it is, I love the fact that it's temporary and that it has shared use, because I don't know what our downtown should look like. I would like to see us incorporate, we have a lot of factors here. We have a permanent memorial, we have a streetscape that is in need of refreshing. We do have a need for event space, but it doesn't need to be in that lot. That is a parking lot. There are others. And I think we're putting the cart before the horse if we go forth and design something permanent and invest in that without really having the vision or money to pay for it. I also feel that at this point, we have Jeff, who has a business background, and Yumi, who's an architect, coming on board, and that they would have a lot to say about putting forth a permanent structure in our downtown that impacts both business and architecture. So I couldn't resist sharing my point of view, but I look forward to hearing theirs as well.
Thank you.
So I came here fully expecting to vote yes on this because of the survey. So I do have one question, just one clarification here. It's a great presentation, but it really led me to believe that what they'd be studying, and I thought it would be very broad, that they would study everything. But and maybe I'm wrong, I kind of got the impression that what they would study would really be event space, more permanent event space only. In other words, nothing else, like no other type of development in terms of best use. So it would just be crafted toward event space. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct. This agreement would be for design of a community space. What that community space is used for, that's what they would be doing the next 9 months of 8.5 months of community engagement. So an extremely long period of time so that they can find out from the people who use the space, who are around the space, who go out in town, who would like more from the downtown, what they would like to see in the downtown. So we're giving them ideas of what we'd like to have it be, an event space, but we also want them to craft it to be a space that can be used all the time. And that's a net loss of 50 parking spaces up to the downtown if we utilize that. So that's what that difference is. It is 50 parking spaces and a lot that right now only utilizes 25 to 30, which we would maintain those 25 to 30 spaces to use for vendors during events, but also for those who usually park in that lot to still have access to that Monday through Friday and on days when there wasn't a community event happening in the space. The idea is to balance what happens in Port Clinton with an event space on the south, I'm sorry, I want to say north and south, that's my Elmhurst background, east and west, on the east side of the tracks as well. This gives an opportunity for us to put on events. Really, this is the only place in the downtown area where we could put larger events on. Port Clinton is a wonderful event space, but it is not large enough to host a full taste. It is not large enough to host larger concert venues or World Music Fest, for example, without breaking it up throughout all of downtown, which would be clunky. This allows for vendors to be in one space at one time. It's a holistic approach in terms of looking at the whole of downtown. It's one of the things that was attractive to us about Lakota. They're working right now on 2nd Street. They were doing our plan all those years ago for the downtown. They are very involved. Members of their team are from Highland Park and from the surrounding area. They're in the community all the time, and they're looking forward. What they've presented to us is a forward look. It is not just saying just this one space in a vacuum. It is looking at the whole of the CBD and the community and what our future needs are. So they will look at everything that's happening in the downtown as part of this, but their focus in the design is for the lot, for a usable community and event space.
Okay, so one more quick follow-up on that as a question, and it's probably before your time, but was anything else ever considered for this space? Or have we always sort of said, well, and by the way, I'm not at all upset by the loss of parking spaces, because I think you adequately showed we do have sufficient. Was anything else ever considered for event space?
For event space?
For events,
I'm sorry, besides event space. Thank you, Mayor.
that is before my time, so I defer to Gita.
We're just not in a position to say at this time, if that's,
Okay.
okay.
I can't recall anything.
All right, well, I don't know what that means, but I'll,
There was a meeting where we discussed options in closed session.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that was before my time. Okay.
No.
Okay, well, I came here fully prepared to support the survey because I always think it's better to get all the information out there, but I really have to agree with Councilmember Stone because I hadn't really thought about it like that, but one of the reasons I've pushed so hard for a master plan and going forward in terms of studying is I'm just afraid that it's one more piecemeal type of thing, and I don't know how that plays into the bigger portion of our city, and I really would like to be a little bit more visionary. And I do have to say, if I was going to use any group to come up with the best all-inclusive kind of event space, it would definitely be Lakota. And I was the person who questioned the numbers, so I really appreciate the explanation, because it did not come out number one, but now I understand that. So I have full confidence in staff and Lakota group, but I just feel like it's not particularly visionary in terms of the way we should be planning for downtown. And I also feel that having not only a business person coming on board, but Yumi, not only from an architectural point of view, but also from an artistic point of view, in terms of the work that we've seen with the cultural arts and the Arts Center, I'd really like to see the bigger vision for all of downtown. So I can't look just at the lot, to your point, Councilmember.
Aaron?
So just a couple food for thought items in response to you. One of the best reasons to look at this as an individual project within the larger scope of the downtown is for grant funding and seeking grant funding. We would need something to show this project is ready to go, this individual piece of the downtown is ready to go, should the council vote at some point in time to continue on and actually do the build out. That allows us to immediately pivot and apply for grants, and we believe a significant dollar amount towards whatever build out costs would be, we would be able to secure grants for. So that is one of the reasons why we're looking at this as an individual plan, but we are also asking Lakota, look at all of downtown. Their awareness is there of what's happening in the downtown. Their awareness is Regional also. They are very in tune with what's happening in the world of retail and downtowns. That's their job. That's what they do every day, is design for areas to move forward and to utilize space to their best advantage. They may come back to us and say, hey, Aaron, we know that you asked us to put in a stage and put in bathrooms and put in this and put in that. And they may say, look what the community told us. They would rather have, a recreational pad of, a jungle gym or something with the park district or some other community double government project, a public government project in that space instead. And that's something we'll bring back to you then and say, hey, we looked at this, but they really want us to look at that. So just some things to think about that, again, this is not approving the building of anything. This would be for design services only.
And what I'm hearing from this council is there's more of an interest in sort of a CBD master plan. I don't know what that kind of timeline is, what that kind of cost is, and sort of, where there's opportunity to do much versus private property and, a basically, fully built-out central business district. So I understand and appreciate what you're saying is this is more of a first pass at, this is a place that we have created for events. We know that at the moment, it's pretty much a stage, tables, and a whole lot of blacktop. And for those of us who stood out there in July and said, why did we repave this and now we're even hotter as we're standing out here? I appreciate the desire to make it a more sort of welcoming and comfortable place if we are indeed having these events, which from so many on this council, I've heard, this is a huge priority. So I don't know where I am on this yet, but I appreciate everybody's input. Andres is next, and then Adam.
Yeah, I'm going to add my voice to my colleagues here. I'm a fan of the lot in terms of it's been fun, and I look forward to the lot this summer. I think that, we are lacking an overall vision for the downtown, and we have a history of just doing things piecemeal. I mean, the fact that Lakota is already going to be doing 2nd Street, and now we're going to hand them the lot, but how do these things go together, and what's happening in between? So I don't want to lose the opportunity to use this summer as a data gathering, research gathering, experience gathering project. For the price, I think we would get a lot of value. But I would recommend that that the project not be, how do we make the lot a permanent structure, and what would it take? But how do we make downtown a place for vibrant activity that's live, right, and that in their spaces, and use the lot experience to gather the kinds of data about what works and what doesn't, not at the lot, but for what attracts people and why do they like it, so that they can take into account what the bigger footprint would look like. And I'm aware that doing a big CBD plan is a bigger project, it's going to take us a while. We would lose this window of opportunity this summer to gather some data. So I would be in favor if we could just kind of pivot the focus about what is the objective of the study. Is it really about how do we make the lot a permanent structure and hear the ideas, or how do we use the lot as an experiment about what happens with live events downtown so it can inform the bigger project that we would want to? One other thing I worry about is I understand going after grants and timing, but sometimes we let the tail wag the dog here, and in this quest for getting that money, we reinforce this piecemeal approach as opposed to maybe giving ourselves a little bit more time to say, what is it that we really want? And then, grant windows come and go. There will be other grant windows.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate your point about how do we use this space 365 days a year. I've only been talking to our Park District friends about how can we get some sort of playground in the middle of town, maybe near the library, somewhere to kind of give families an opportunity to have this be more of a destination and then go get something to eat or whatever. Adam, oh, sorry,
Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Stolberg.
No apology. I hear what my colleagues are saying in terms of a grander vision. But I think sometimes that grand vision gets you stuck in going in a circle for 5 years. And I think that, first of all, the Lakota plan from 2007, if memory serves me correctly, the key anchor to that was the redevelopment of the Sunset Foods Corner. which isn't happening and has no plan on happening anytime in the near future. I think this can be used, first of all, Lakota has experience in so many other facets of our development, redevelopment, ongoing analysis. So I think rather than trying to encompass so much and ending up with so little, I think the lot and Lakota's vision for what it could be could serve as the impetus for moving forward with other facets of downtown. And this is like building a shopping center with an anchor tenant in your back pocket already. So I look at it as an opportunity, not as an end-all, but as a beginning. And from that, further tasking Lakota with updating their existing plans, re-updating that plan from 2007, knowing that corner isn't changing, and incorporating that. Because the streetscape is nice, some of the other things are nice, but this is 22,000 visitors. And the one thing I remember the most was the Vintage Fair. And those were not Highland Park residents. There were people getting off the Metro train. There were people coming from Evanston and Chicago. And that's what brings new people into our businesses, into our shops, into our restaurants. So I think we can kind of do a little bit of both. If this plan is approved tonight, I certainly think Lakota can be directed to have a vision on the bigger picture, and as they recommend ideas for the lot, to be able to understand that it's going to grow and expand. But I think if we wait and try and do that whole expansive project, we'll sit here in 3 years with nothing.
Okay.
So I would still be in favor of it.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Councilmember Bloomberg?
Having heard everything that's been said, I'm somewhat torn because on the one hand, I agree that we don't really know what's coming down the line. Things have changed a lot between the pandemic and prior to that, the changes in retailing. I think we're in need of parking, as some people have put forward. But parking has to be in particular areas relative to areas in Highland Park that need the traffic. We have heard repeatedly that we have a vibrancy issue in downtown, despite the fact that we know that we have actually filled a lot more storefronts since that topic was first raised. So statistically, we know we're already doing better, and yet we still are challenged to improve the amount of business that gets done in downtown and to bring it back to where it used to be. I have had concerns about programs like this that are attractive. They bring people to Highland Park, but they're a little bit like billboards. It's hard to know what the dynamic is in terms of people visiting something like this or going to Food Trucks Thursday, which are wonderful, fun events, but does that actually translate into regular improved patronage in downtown Highland Park? I don't really know the answer to that. I do know that Lakota is pretty good at figuring those kinds of things out, which is why I am enthusiastic about Lakota and made the initial comments I did. So I'm not sure there's a right answer here, given the costs involved with hiring Lakota and giving them a pretty broad canvas to work with, and knowing the amount of input that they take. One of their great strengths is that, is taking input in terms of recommendations for a project. Ultimately, I think it would be a good idea to retain them to take a look at this. I would be very careful about being bound necessarily to the lot as a location, although it seems to be the only location where you could do something on this scale. I don't know how much an advantage that is to certain parts of the downtown to put that there. But I think, having worked with them in the past, they still tend to look at all of those other issues. So in the end, I would be comfortable voting in favor of this, but I hear what's being said, and I think those are reasonable cautions to take, and we may need further input on that.
Okay, well, with that, is there a motion on item 23?
Sure, I would make a motion to approve the professional services agreement with the Lakota Group for the lot design.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
No.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman?
No.
Councilmember Littwer?
Yes.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, that's 5 ayes, 2 nays, and item 23 is approved. Thanks for a tremendous presentation, and looking forward to hearing the findings. Thank you. Item 24 is a referral of a zoning variation from Section 150.407 to the Zoning Board of Appeals for 1248 Glencoe Avenue. Joel? Thank you. We do need a presentation. Thanks. That's You, me, and Jeff were showing off to make sure you really know what you've gotten yourselves into. We're going to be here forever.
Do we
Just
really
kidding.
need this?
Midnight.
11:30.
This is just a compare referral. Do we need a presentation?
We do.
Hi, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to present this evening. This is a referral of a zoning variation from Section 150.407 of the zoning code. The project is it's an existing home for adult people with cognitive disabilities, known as RALFA. The proposal is to increase the number of bedrooms, sleeping quarters as is referred to in the zoning code, from 3 to 4 by introducing a bedroom in the cellar of this dwelling. So I just want to give just a background on comprehensive referrals and then talk about the staff's recommendation and a revision to that recommendation. So as council may recall, comprehensive referrals are in our code and is a method by which a request can be made to the council to refer to the zoning board an item that is not otherwise established as one of the authorized variations. There are 14 that the zoning code has established that the zoning board of appeals has jurisdiction. So for those that it does not, there is this process. And the council is not asked to make a final determination on the variance request itself, but rather to determine if the request should be further considered through referral to the zoning board. The council has a choice in these matters. Council may refer to the zoning board to conduct a public hearing and send a report and recommendation back to the city council for final decision. Council may refer to the zoning board to direct the board to conduct a public hearing and make a final decision. The council may also choose not to refer, which effectively denies the variation request. Now, in terms of staff's recommendations, staff report did recommend referral to the zoning board to hold a public hearing, make a recommendation to council for for final action. Revised, after thinking about this and reflecting upon it and discussing with Corporation Counsel, I have a revised staff recommendation that the referral go to the Plan Commission to hold a public hearing to make a recommendation to council whether a zoning text amendment should be made related to sleeping quarters. And here's the reason why. For comprehensive referrals, we have seen in the past and we have typically viewed dimensional relief that is not otherwise authorized as one of the 14 within the jurisdiction of the zoning board, as those are items that the council has considered and referred to the zoning board for consideration. This request, although it just has to do with a bedroom, it is in an article of the zoning code that relates to uses. And so the concern that I have with that from a policy matter is that we don't allow use variations. And so for that, Madam Mayor, I would respectfully suggest that although one can apply for a comprehensive referral, as the zoning code does allow, I would say by policy, it would be best for the council to direct that a text amendment be considered by the Plan Commission, recommend to this body, then for final action. Thank you, Mayor. That's
Mayor, if I
Thank you.
could
And, yeah, go ahead.
just expand, that was an excellent presentation. Director Fontaine and I did discuss this over the past several days, and I concur with the revised recommendation. And just another bit of history, as long as we're throwing out the name Compiere referral, some future council members, or maybe even existing council members, may not know that's not a general zoning term. Compiere is the name of a city corporation council before me, who came up with a unique interpretation to to allow the city to review variations that weren't otherwise allowed. And really, as Director Fontaine honed in on, the intent was bulk regulation variations, as he called them, dimensional relief, but more to the regulations of bulk as opposed to use. It's very uncommon for a municipality to allow a change of use by variation. It's much more common to change a use through a text amendment. And we're talking about here allowing bedrooms in, I'm going to use the word cellar. That's the defined word. It's what we all commonly know as a basement. And where more of the area is below the ground than not. That's a cellar.
But it's different than a basement, though, in that regard.
Literally,
right?
it is.
But I'm saying what is commonly known and understood, where the majority of the space is below ground,
Right.
it is a cellar.
Right.
Most of us in Highland Park think of it as a basement. In any event, we're talking about a bedroom that our building code would allow, because if it has the necessary
Egress.
access window, but our zoning code does not. And so we thought about this as perhaps something, not only would it be better as a text amendment, it may be something from a policy perspective that is not unique to this one house, that may be applicable elsewhere in the city, and may be done in many, many cases unlawfully currently in the city. But that's another story.
So in this specific case, with this specific agenda item, is your request that we pause on the question of the Compiere referral and instead come back and answer your current new
No, actually-
revised recommendation? Or is it take action and then come back another time
If
and
you
put
do-
that on a PDC?
You certainly could pause, but we believe that you are able to take action tonight. And in fairness to the petitioner with whom we've discussed this, they wouldn't lose any time. It is on your agenda as a recommendation. If there were to be a text amendment, as you know, the city council must direct it.
Right.
We believe that you have the ability, if you desire, to direct a text amendment to the Plan Commission. It also requires a public hearing, and given the council meeting agendas and schedule, the time period that it would come back to the council, which would be the second meeting in May, would be the same time it would come back to you if it had gone to the zoning board. So there's no time loss for the petitioner. It would just be being heard by a different public body, the PDC as opposed to the ZBA.
Can you put the motion back up? Councilmember Stone has a question.
I don't know if this is for Steve or for Joe.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember, I'm sorry.
Is a bedroom currently allowed in a basement but not a cellar?
Correct.
Yeah, because of the access
Okay.
window to egress.
Right.
Yep. It's about.
Basement is what
get
a
out.
lot of people know as a walkout,
Right.
I mean, I've got more comments, but
split
if you
level.
want them now.
Councilmember Stolberg and then Councilmember Bloomberg.
Thanks, Mayor. First of all, I can't believe we had a corporation council named Compare before you, so I thought you've been here forever.
Steve was born.
Yes.
But Joel, first of all, thank you for thinking a little outside the box, because the way I look at it as the Compare referral is a one-off.
Yeah.
All the time. And I see this being a recurring potential application, opportunity, whatever you want to call it, for a homeowner, whether it's new construction or remodeling. So I think it would make sense to do it as a text amendment to the zoning code. And I think if I understood Corporation Council, the action we would be taking is just having you guys draft the text amendment, put it on the PDC agenda for recommendation, either for or against, coming back to us, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
That would
I'm
be,
good.
that would
Thank
be
you,
what
Joel.
would happen.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank
Mayor.
you.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Councilmember
So-
Bloomberg.
What do you say?
My only question,
Good point.
Corporation Counsel indicated the petitioner is comfortable with this. I just wanted to nod your head or shake your head.
Thumbs up
Okay.
from the back row.
Thank you. Got a thumbs up.
Yeah, from the petitioner's point of view, I mean, the consideration, if the council so chooses to refer it, would be considered. It's just by a different means. And again,
But
it's
in
because
terms of the timing, that was what I was
Yeah.
concerned with. Yeah.
Well, the timing might actually be less if we gave the ZBA final authority, but if they had to come back to us, it would be no different than the PDC coming back to us.
correct.
Right, I don't,
Which was what the recommendation.
Which is an option under the referral.
yes.
Right.
Councilmember Stone has another question.
So I've got a concern about this specific
Question.
the specific question that's come to, the specific use that's come to us. I have slept in a bedroom that's in a basement at a family member's home, and it's got window wells, and that's how you exit the room in the event of an emergency. And in the best of circumstances, that's a stressful thing. You've got to open the window fully, you've got to climb onto something to be able to get out the window. You've got to access a small staircase, a little ladder, and then you've got to lift up a grate that's above your head, so that nobody from upstairs can fall out into the window well. So we're talking in this exact case about a bedroom in a cellar for a person who's disabled. The design for the home shows wheelchair ramps. And I'm concerned about the safety of this particular situation. The other thing in a basement or a cellar bedroom is the issue of radon. And that would need to be addressed as well. I don't know if I think that's something that the state has jurisdiction over rather than the city. But I would be concerned about putting a disabled person in a bedroom where the egress was that difficult. So I don't know where that leaves this, but I think a basement bedroom is different than a cellar bedroom, and the egress is a bit easier from a basement than from a cellar, I believe, unless I'm thinking of it incorrectly. Because there's more.
There's more above ground, that's correct, but, the cellars frequently have undersized windows, so you cannot get out those windows, even if you were able-bodied and really trying. Not in all cases, but that's what happens because you're below ground. Now, the building code provisions, to the building code now, and we're talking about now forward, right? So we have modern building codes. A lot of the homes, were built during other times, and some not intended to have, obviously, sleeping in the basement or the cellar. The current building code has provisions whereby you have the easy-to-open windows, so the window actually has a bar that can help you open that so that it's easy to open, relatively speaking. Then you do have to get out, like you said, into a corrugated metal thing that holds the earth back and proceed either up a small staircase or just out, depending on how deep the foundation is. And so you're right, you do have to push the grate off the top, and that grate is got to be rated strong enough to hold somebody standing on it. But it's not beyond most people's capability to move that grate. Whether or not someone should sleep in a bedroom because they may have physical disabilities or otherwise, is really a choice that needs to be made by responsible parties in a household. It is not a choice, in my respectful opinion, of the zoning code or the building code.
But if you're saying that we already allow a bedroom in a basement, I don't know that we need to be considering whether to allow a bedroom in a cellar. I guess that's my concern, because of these safety issues.
Councilmember Lidward, then Stolberg, then Hellman.
So I agree with the text amendment analysis, and I think it's wonderful that you brought it to us because this is a larger issue than one particular case. And so I do think this is the correct legal way for us to proceed, and I'm glad Corporation Counsel worked with you to develop that. So I'm really in favor of that. I recognize Councilmember Stone's concerns, but that's, again, an individual choice, and I think we need to make broader policy. And if it's broader policy than one home, if it's basement and cellars, then making sure that they are in compliance, whether it's with fire or whomever. I think that's what we should be doing. And so I'm definitely in favor of approaching it as a text amendment and sending it to PDC. But that still means it has to have review for the individual case. So assuming they do that, it still comes back and we still have to.
And to address, I think to address what Councilmember Stone is saying about the concern about using a cellar in that way, if the council so directs, we can certainly, put some provisions in the code where you can't unless it meets the building code. We can literally say that somewhere if that's where you'd like to do that. But, that's more of, certainly if somebody goes to apply to do any kind of construction to put a bedroom in the basement, they will need to do the window. We have a current building code that would require that. But, I don't know if that addresses the issue further or not.
Okay. Councilmember Stolberg.
Thanks. I hear what Councilmember Stone is saying as well, but, to me, that's equating a permitted use in the zoning code and then telling a business how to run their business within the permitted use. I think that's up, with all due respect to the individual homeowner, and if that's a chance they feel they want to take or not take with somebody in their basement or cellar, then I don't think that's for us to regulate. I do have a question, because my house has a basement or a cellar or whatever, and a window and a ladder, and I don't have a grate. I've got a fence around my, and it opens, and I'm pretty sure I complied with the building code when I built it. But Steve, if you would, just for my edification, can you give us a definition between a cellar and a basement?
in fact,
Just so we understand what we're
it's in
talking
your-
about here.
It's in the pass out, but
Oh, did I miss it? I'm sorry.
yeah, there's a actual,
There's a picture.
there's a picture.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, I got it. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Okay.
So go ahead, Joel.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you, Steve. So here's the section 15407 we're talking about, that's the actual wording. And so 202, which is our definition section of the zoning code, defines basement and cellar accordingly.
Got it.
If you'd like, I could read it, or you could.
No, I understand.
No, we
So
can
to
read it.
Steve's analogy,
Yes.
most of what we consider a basement, the
Is a
code
cellar.
defines as a cellar.
That's
That's what I wanted to make sure I
That's the point
understood.
I was making.
Okay.
Just
Perfect, thank you.
Councilmember Holloman.
I was going to move the motion, if somebody could put that back up on the screen. I'm assuming everybody's spoken their piece.
Councilmember Stone has one more thing to say.
Haven't
One
we
more
all
quick
spoken
thing to-
twice?
Yeah, one more quick thing to say. I think the city has responsibility for safety. That's why we have a building code, why we have planning and zoning regulations, and it's within our purview to say no to cellar bedrooms for this reason. Not just disabled people, but also children sleeping in those sorts of bedrooms, I think would be, potentially in danger of not being able to exit in situations like fires.
And so currently now, if you do have a sleeping quarter in the, it is against the zoning code. A violation and a ticket could be written. If you take this out, that can't happen. Because remember, building codes are for when you're built, if it's already existing, it's existing, right? And so the building codes would apply to new construction or renovation.
So you're making a motion.
I move that we refer to the Plan and Design Commission to hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to the council whether a zoning text amendment should be made related to sleeping quarters, bedrooms in a cellar.
Second. Good.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia? Aye. Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
No.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman?
Aye.
Councilmember Littler?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye. 6 ayes, 1 nay, 24 as provided will be coming back to us from the Plan and Design Commission. Thank you. Item 25, consideration of a special exception request for an off-street parking facility, 700 Park Avenue West, 678 to 696 Park Avenue West, and 668 to 670 Park Avenue West.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff recommendation is to consider the Plan and Design Commission's recommendation to approve a special exception with conditions, and if appropriate, direct staff to draft documents.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Councilmember Stone?
Sorry.
No apologies, thanks.
I appreciate forestry working to find the best solution to accommodate this, and don't worry back there, Larry, I'm good with this. But according to the plans, no species have yet been provided for the new plant material, and I wanted to just ask the person who made the motion if we could approve this with the provision that no invasive species be included to be verified by the staff prior to planting? That's usually something we
I
look.
prefer to leave it to staff. I'm going to leave my motion as is.
That's usually something we look at when we see the drawings, and that wasn't in the materials this time.
That's not my motion
May I
at this
answer
time.
the question, Mayor?
Sure.
So the zoning code does have provisions for plantings, and I know that if there is a case, I believe that there's one that is an invasive species in there, right? And so we do not recommend that. And so I believe that the applicant is transplanting some of the landscaping, is that correct? And I could have him speak more specifically. So I don't recall what the species was of the landscaping you're transplanting, but it's already existing on site.
Okay, thank you. I'm good then.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Will the clerk please call the vote on 25?
Councilmember,
Do we need more?
You can do a voice vote because this is just a motion to direct. It's coming back to you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Up, you want to come say hello?
You already got it.
No, not on this, I just wanted to say that Carl Burhap and Ben Miller and the whole Plan and Design Commission were phenomenal in working through this process. And I hear a lot of people complain about the process. You know, we've worked in every town on the North Shore. Best experience I ever had. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Okay, with that, I am seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You want to go into closed
You wanna go-
session?
Well, we have to go into closed session.
So adjourn to closed session.
Adjourn to closed session for the committee of the whole, so I'm
No,
down.
no, no. It's a closed session for the city council.
Thank you. It's a little late.
But you need to
Seeking a
recite
motion to go into closed session.
Do we need a reason?
for a specific reason.
Yes,
Right.
I'll do that.
Tony's got it
Move to
covered.
go into closed session to approve closed session minutes and to discuss security pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C21 and 8 respectively.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littwer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. We'll go into closed. Thank you.